Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You're listening to episode number 161. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction hypnotist, and I'm just turning my volume down a little bit there. Okay, Law of Attraction hypnotist and number one best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction, Align Yourself with the Manifesting Conditions and Successfully Attract Your Desires. I'm also the founder of HipTalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the app stores today. And today I have a very special guest with me, Christina Rice. Christina is an intuitive business mentor, a channel, and manifestation expert who helps people raise their frequency, tap into their intuition, and manifest abundance. Christina is the founder of Ahai. Is that how you pronounce it? Ahai?
It's Ahai.
Ahai. Ahai 7D energy healing. And she has coached thousands of individuals in spiritual growth, business development, brain rewiring, and optimizing their wellness. And she is also the host of her own podcast, Christina the Channel podcast. And it's been running for over, what did you say, 6 years now?
Yeah, it's 6 years.
And she has also been featured in a number of top publications like Forbes, Entrepreneur, Popsugar, and Delish. And she can also be found across the internet on her podcast, on her website, ChristinaTheChannel.com, which is beautiful. You got to check it out, by the way, and her YouTube channel. And you can check out all these links that will be in the resources in our show notes. And so today, Christina is going to be sharing some of her insights on raising your frequency and unlocking your intuition. So, welcome to the show, Christina.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. I checked out your website and you just look like you do, so many amazing things and that, that you just really seem like the spiritual entrepreneur, like that is just living her dream and helping people, and you just got it all together, and you're helping other people to get it all together and helping other spiritual entrepreneurs to manifest the success and the life that they live and that they deserve.
I appreciate that. I wouldn't say I have it all together, but I try to keep it as together as I can. And yeah, I love supporting other people in creating lives that they are excited to live every single day and pursuing their passions and just making their dreams a reality. So yeah, I feel very lucky that I get to have such an incredible job.
Yes. Well, you are so young. You're, young looking. I mean, like, I wonder, like, where did this begin for you? Like, what was it that caused you to tap into this? The ideas that you have, the intuitive channeling, all of that. I'd be really interested to know that.
Yeah, so I was I was really intuitive when I was young. I think it's a pretty common story of being very tapped in, but not really knowing what's going on, not being able to deal with everything coming through. I didn't have parents that are very in tune with this kind of thing, so they didn't really know how to support me. And I was receiving a lot of information. It was very overwhelming, and I kind of like quote unquote turned it off, which really in me suppressing it was just causing a lot of illness in my body. And it wasn't until I uh, got to college where I kind of had like a trigger moment and came down with chronic illness. And that illness was something that I was trying to heal from for quite a few years. And through the process of trying to heal myself is kind of how I found all of these different modalities. So it first started with alternative health and nutrition. I became really passionate about nutrition and lifestyle changes to support physical healing. That wasn't getting me everywhere I wanted to go. So then I started learning more about mindset, brain rewiring, and using that to heal my body. And through that process, my intuition was just starting to open up more and more again. And it felt like a remembering of things that I had experienced when I was younger. And once I was open to that, and just through those years of exploring myself, going through my own healing journey, that's how a lot of it really opened up. Um, I started my business when I was in college, and I'm very much an old soul. And so I started coaching people when I was in college, and started my podcast when I was in college. And it's kind of just been since then. I was very much, I feel like, in the right place at the right time. And was around a lot of people in Los Angeles who were connecting me to like kind of all the right people, and my business just kind of grew and grew. My platform started to grow, and it's been an evolution since then. So it started off as working mostly in more on the nutrition side, and my energy healing work and intuitive work was kind of on the side. And then over time, that kind of became more of the main focus. And in building my practice so quickly and using a lot of these principles, with my intuition and manifestation, um, I was there were a lot of people in my life who were like basically asking me to be their business coach. So then I started to help other people in their businesses, since I was kind of already doing it anyway. And, eventually ended up here. That's the short of
Yeah.
it.
So it seems like it really happened very organically. I mean, it wasn't something that you were seeking to do. It just sort of found you. And I think that so many times that when we follow our intuition, things do sort of naturally fall into place. I mean, not to take away, I'm sure that you work very hard to grow your business and be business minded, and I'm sure a lot of the strategies that you teach your clients how to do, they're going to have to put in the time, put in the energy, put in the effort that it takes. But that effort, it feels sometimes like effortless, like the time just sort of slips by, and when you're doing something that you were really meant for.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think of like, I did a podcast a couple months ago that was like how I manifested my chronic illness. And I was basically saying like, my chronic illness is what led me to where I am today. And before that, I was in such dark depression and struggled with anxiety my whole life. And I just remember like hitting a breaking point. I wasn't spiritual at all. And I just said, like, if I have a purpose here, make it known to me. Otherwise, like, I don't want to be here anymore. I was in a really, really bad place and so unhappy. And after that, it was like, I got really sick and everything just kind of what I perceived to be downhill. But it was through that path that I ended up here. And that was the universe putting me on this path. And I feel really grateful that I was able to find my purpose so much earlier than I think a lot of other people do, and learn a lot of these principles earlier on. And with my business, to your point, like, I've done it both ways. I've done it where I'm just very at the beginning, like very in my left brain, trying to only follow the strategy. And it just felt like I was forcing and pushing the whole way through. And then when I started to really open myself up to using my intuition more in my business and manifesting my business, I just found that everything grew exponentially with so much less effort. And that's not to say that there isn't effort. And I think that's something that a lot of people misunderstand about manifestation. And people, I hear people say, well, I just don't understand how you can sit on a mountain and dream your way to a business. And I'm like, that's not exactly how it works. Like, it's not really exactly how it works. Like there's aligned action, and there is working with the universe, right? And showing like, hey, I'm showing up like the person I say I want to be. Because if I'm just sitting here saying I want this, but I'm not acting like I want it, well, what signal am I actually sending out to the universe? So that aligned action piece is really important. But it can feel, I say like my life feels like a dream sometimes, where I just feel like random things drop in my lap because I'm setting that intention and I'm working with the universe. I'm co-creating always. And so things can be in flow versus feeling like I'm pushing a boulder up a hill my whole life. And that's how it felt when I first started my business. And I really it excites me to see so many more people using a lot of these principles, like with intuition and manifestation, in their businesses. And if you look at people who are some of the wealthiest people in the world. Like, how do they create that? There's a reason why they're all, they're meditating and they're doing these daily practices to get in touch with their intuition, and they have spiritual advisors and they work with astrologers and hypnotherapists. Like, this is what people do. They may not talk about it as much, and some of them do, but I think that's important for people to realize. And I feel like if you're not utilizing intuition in your business, you're missing out on a lot of growth that could be a lot easier for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when they talked about, say, in The Secret, that these are the secrets that have been hidden and kept from you. I mean, it's not so much that they have been actually kept from anybody, it's always been there, but these are the secrets. These are the things that the most successful people, the inventors, I mean, where did these invention ideas come from? They came from tuning in and listening to your intuition. But how are you going to be able to hear and listen and tune into your intuition if you're not taking time to be quiet every day, or be intentional about that? So, I mean, how much of being successful would you say is the is listening and paying attention to the intuition versus the strategy and following, what it is that you're supposed to do?
Mm. Well, I suppose that would depend on your definition of successful, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Okay, let's say achieving the results in your business that you
hmm
desire.
Yeah. So my personal perspective on it is I really believe in like balancing masculine and feminine energy. And I think it's really interesting to kind of see how the spirituality space has evolved kind of in this aspect. But I maybe it's just the people I tune into, but I feel like there are a lot of people who are kind of preaching this like we need to be in more of our feminine and get rid of our masculine, and I'm all about stepping into our feminine. I think stepping into our divine feminine is like the way that we are going to unlock our magic, but I don't think that means excluding like masculine energy, because that is like some structure that allows us to flow, that like allows us to feel safe in the flow, right? And so I think of it as like I give myself a bit of structure to work in, and then I let my intuition create, right? And like that doesn't have to limit me or box me in, but it's just there so I feel safe in following my intuition, if that makes sense, and just giving me a little bit more stability along the way. So I feel like it's a balance of both in my opinions. And in my opinion, and I feel like for me, I'm glad I understand the whole strategy aspect and the intuitive aspect. But if I am picking one over the other, I'm going to pick my intuition every single time, because anytime I've made a quantum leap in my business, it has been because my intuition has been like screaming at me, and it might not make any sense, but I trust it. And like that's how I am able to make that big leap. So if I have to pick one over the other, I'm going to pick intuition every time. But I think there's a balance. And I feel like I've seen issues with clients when they go too far in one direction over the other.
Yeah, it's like the yin and the yang. I mean, you
hmm
you really can't have one without the other. And I mean, I'll be honest, I tend to lead a little bit more with my with my masculine side. I just I it's a comfort zone. And but I absolutely know wholeheartedly that to probably get to that next level, that's
hmm
going to come from the creative side of my feminine. So how would you coach a person who needs to, tap more into their intuition? How would you coach them to do that?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, like, off of what you just said, because I think it's important. Like, I feel like that's a really strong foundation for most people. And like, I'm the same way. And I think that's how I built that foundation to grow my business even more. And like, I'm at the stage of my business where now like my masculine structure doesn't have to be me. Actually, it can be my team, which allows me to be solely the creative. But it was like those building blocks to getting there. And I do think that foundation is really helpful. And I see a lot of clients who don't have that foundation, who feel like they're just kind of floating around and they're like, what am I even doing? And that can feel very disorienting. You know what I mean? So that foundation is really helpful. But in
I'm
terms
very
of,
visual. So
yeah,
I see
there we go.
people literally floating around.
I mean, that's how it feels, right? Like it can feel like that though. We need some grounding, like getting into our bodies. We're having a human experience so we can get into our bodies, right? But in terms of coaching somebody to listen to their intuition more, I think the first thing is space and silence, right? It's really going to depend where someone's at, but we have to realize how much of our society is set up so that we don't listen to ourselves. We have so much messaging that's telling us we don't know the answer, that we need somebody else outside of us to tell us the answer, that we're not the expert, that we're not good enough. We have so much connection to people, almost too much. We have our phones and TVs and the internet and ads here and podcasts, and we are in a society where boundaries are not very existent unless we create them for ourselves. And so boundaries is like key to me for people to actually be able to tune in. Like, what are your boundaries like with people in your life, with technology? Are you giving yourself that time every single day to just be with yourself and be in silence? And it really starts to be that simple, but that's like baseline, because I find so many people, they can't hear their own inner voice because there's just so much clutter from other people's voices and ideas in their heads, and they can't even tell what's theirs and what's not. The
Ooh.
other thing that I think is really helpful, honestly, is are you into human design?
Tell me what you mean by human design.
Human design is, it's a system, so it combines different systems like astrology, the chakra system, I forget the other ones, but basically you it's like a chart kind of, so you get a chart, your human design chart, and the system has different energy types.
Okay.
Human design has been huge for me in my business. I'm not a human design expert. It's something I incorporate just from like what I've learned myself. But what I like about human design is they talk about your strategy and your authority. So your authority is really like your best guidance system for making decisions for yourself. And what I like about this, like for all of my business clients, I have them look at their human design chart first, because I am, for example, my authority is my sacral. And so what that means is my body tells me if something's a yes or a no. Um, I light up, I lean in, I'm excited, like I feel like I have more energy. Other people might be, you might be an emotional authority, which means like, how do you feel emotionally? So there are different types of authorities. And what I like about that, it's just like a side note, but it is something that I found really helpful for people who feel like I want something more tangible to tell me what my intuition is saying, is it gives you some guidance as to like what to look for, right? But that's just something interesting for people to look at. But with your intuition, right? It's like, first I need a blank slate. I need a blank slate. I need time by myself, right? Can you take a weekend off and like not listen to any content? And that's scary for people, but if you haven't taken a social media detox, you really need to. You really need to, because you'll be surprised how much you can figure out for yourself. I will challenge people. I do this pretty often with people, and I'll say, I want you for the next 72 hours, don't ask anybody for their opinion. And that
Mm.
means don't ask the internet, don't ask your friend, don't ask your mom. Like, you don't get to ask anybody for their opinion. And you start to realize how often you ask people outside of yourself instead of just sitting with it and giving yourself a chance to answer, because right? And you start to tune into cues in your body of like, what am I excited about? What lights me up? What is my heart guiding me toward? And there's a process of learning what are my thoughts versus what is my heart, right? And you start to think about like, is this just fear? Is this just conditioning? Like, when I have this thought, where is this coming from? Who did I learn this from? Right? And it's starting to peel apart your thoughts, right? This is like a whole process. This is like core for like brain rewiring, right? Starting to think about your thoughts, what's coming up and where does that come from? But when you start to do that over time, you start to realize, wait, that's not even my own. Like, where did I learn that? And is this in highest alignment for me? So the question I always ask myself to realign myself with like my highest and best is, when I have a thought, is this coming from fear or love? Is this coming from abundance or scarcity? Like, I ask myself that all the time. And it's very clear to me. If it's coming from fear or scarcity, that's not mine. That's not my truth. My truth is to be in love. My truth is to be abundant. Like, and that's what I'm deciding is the truth of who I am. And so if it's fear, it's not mine. I don't need to make it mine. And how can I reframe this to make it come from love instead of fear? Right. And these are ways to start to identify what the limiting beliefs are that are popping up, because we start to realize like how much is in our heads that it's a limiting belief that's not even your own, right? There's so much conditioning that started when we're younger. And so that's like an overall process of practice to start to just become aware and conscious of what's not conscious, because that's the problem, right? A lot of people don't realize that they're operating from their subconscious thoughts, and we want to make what's not conscious conscious, bring it into our conscious awareness so that we are making choices from a conscious place instead of just going off of our operating system, right? If you're just going off of your automatic operating system, your automatic programming, then you're not really making conscious choice. And there's no room for your intuition to come in, because you're just like an automatic, processing machine. So that is really key with, and that's like kind of core of just like in your life, it's that gut feeling, right? And so depending on where people are at, if we want to get deeper and like, how do I become psychic, right? Because everybody is psychic, we can go there too. And I think what's really helpful for people with their psychic abilities is literally just learning about the different clair senses. And I know some people feel like the clairs are outdated, but I think it's a helpful reference point, because the truth is that everybody's psychic, everybody's intuitive, just not everybody realizes it. It comes through in different ways for different people. But when you start to learn about what the different psychic senses are and the different ways that information can come through, you start to realize, oh, wait, that happens for me, right? So it's like, it can start with, you're seeing angel numbers everywhere. It's 11:11 on the clock. It's 3:33. It's 2:22. It can start with, hey, show me a sign, show me a cartoon bear if I should take this job, right? And you just go through your day, you let it go, and then you're at the store and you randomly see, Kodiak pancakes and there's a cartoon bear, and you're not planning that, right?
Yeah.
So you get the sign. It can start like that. It can start like, I'm saying something and a train goes by and just honks. And I'm like, whoa, that was a yes. That was a confirmation, right? It can come through as goosebumps in your body. It can come through as that gut feeling. It could come through as, coughing in your throat, things like that, right? It also is so commonly, the voice in your head that you think is you, it's your intuition. Right. And like that is, I know that's very hard for a lot of people who are very clairaudient and they think it's been them all the time. But then when you start to get quiet and tune into the different quality of information coming through and start to ask those questions, and even noticing, where is this coming from? Like for me, my clairaudience will come through, like it literally feels like it's coming through my heart space, or it's coming through, like the top of my crown, or even the back of my head. And if it's a thought, it's coming through like the front of my head. Does that make sense? Like I even
Absolutely.
notice a different place.
Yeah.
With imagination, right? Imagination is like the doorway to intuition. And the more you practice imagining, the more you're like using that muscle for your clairvoyance, right? So I'm very clairvoyant. And for a long time, I just didn't even know that when it was in my mind's eye, that was also a messages came through for me as well. It's not just, if you see an apparition, I would say actually more people, it's typically what's in their mind's eye than like seeing an apparition around them. So I think that just learning about the different ways that intuition come through is really, really helpful for people, because you start to realize what sense it's coming through subtly, and then you can pay more attention to it. And I always tell people, once you have an idea of like, I'm more clairvoyant, clairaudient, claircognizant, then start to go into that one specifically. And the more you develop that, the more the other ones will start to develop as well.
That is beautiful. That's a lot to unpack. We just went over a framework for whether to, whether something is coming from love or fear, or abundance or scarcity. I love that framework. I love that you talked about how, you need to take some time away to like really get clear on who your voice is, and then all of the different ways that intuition can show up for us. It was you really spoke to me when you talked about taking the 72 hours, because earlier this year in January I did that. I just moved into this beautiful house, and I have my own Zen room. And so I said, you know what? Now that I have a Zen room, I need to actually use it, like use it or lose it. And so I took a 3-day retreat in my house, And, and it basically just said, because for me, it wasn't even so much, I listened to myself. I can't really identify so much with, uh, asking other people for help. I actually probably should ask more people for help. I tend to rely a little bit more. So I've got too many things going on in my head at one time though, and I get very like bogged down between all of the many projects, and I'm like, okay, I know that I need to have a very clear focus this year on one thing, and so I'm going to take 3 days and I'm going to figure it out.
Mhm.
And what rose to the surface, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. So I highly recommend people do that. And I had a little structure for myself on the way that I was going to do that. It was like literally read, walk, journal, meditate, do hypnosis, and just brainwash myself
Mhm.
ultimately with the thoughts I wanted for success in 2021. And, so it's really cool. So yeah, and I totally relate to what you're talking about when it comes to the signs, because paying attention and that voice inside. So the signs, I mean, the signs are whatever they mean to you. Like so many people, like I'm sure you get asked all the time, what does it mean if you see 333 or 222 or
Yeah.
1111 all the time? And it's like, you know what? It really, I mean, I I'll look it up, what are the angels saying? But at the same time, I think that it means what it means to you.
Mhm.
Like, you're calibrated for a certain sign. And so it means what it means to you. And my voice for me is like the louder the voice is, it's more ego based,
Mhm.
and the softer it is coming from my intuition.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because and I totally agree with people ask me all the time, what does this mean? What does that mean? And like I can tell you like general like yeah, spiritual meaning of this and what this number means, but it's I think when people are asking those questions, sometimes they don't, and I know they don't mean to, but it's kind of coming from the wrong place of they're still trying to use their logical brain to understand it. And it's like your guides are just saying, yes, like we're here, you're on the right track, confirmation, like simple as that. And like, we don't need to look so much into it. Instead, like sink into your heart space of like, you know what it means. And you might not even have words for what it means, and that's okay. But to your point, and this is something that threw me off, a couple years ago when I really wanted to develop this more because there were a lot of people like in the intuitive space. I remember like trying to learn about it and I kept hearing your intuition is super loud, like it'll hit you across the face. And I was like, that's not always like sometimes that happens, but that's typically not how it is for me. Like it's quieter. And that's why that space away from everybody, getting in silence, all of that is how I tune in, and that's how I started to really cultivate that, right? And so the more that you practice listening to that softer voice, because it is softer, then that it becomes louder just because you're used to being attuned to it. So the example I like to give is a dog whistle. So it's like, have you ever walked by or heard a dog whistle and it's so high pitched, a lot of people don't even hear it. They don't
Mhm.
even hear it at all. And then other people are like, oh my gosh, it's almost like a soft sound, but it's so screechy. To me, it's kind of like what it's like to tune into intuition in the sense of it's almost like it's such a different frequency that people miss it. They're just not used to it.
Mhm.
But then once you're attuned and you know what to look for, you hear it and it's like it's soft, but it's also loud, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
you know the tone. You're attuned to the tone now, so you can pick it up. And it's kind of like once you start to hear that softer voice and you know what you're looking for, then you can hear it more and more and it comes through more strongly.
I have a question that just popped into my head. And I wonder if anybody else has this question. So let's say that you think your intuition is telling you something, and I don't know if it's a habitual thing that you're afraid that your intuition is telling you something,
Mhm.
like I mean, like, let's say sometimes, it could be a health thing, it could be a relationship thing, whatever it is, and let's say that you just keep hearing your intuition, or you think it's your intuition telling you something, but you absolutely do not like the answer, or you do not want that result, you know?
Mhm.
And I mean, what happens if you don't listen to that voice? I mean, can you change your like can you change your what's seems like inevitable
Mm.
if you
That's a
don't
really
like
good
that
Yeah,
outcome?
it's a good question, and it really depends on the situation, I'll say, right? Like my approach with intuition and like I think a lot of people think of psychic work as future based. I'm not really that
Mhm.
future based. I'm more of like, what do we focus on in the now to create the future I want, right? Because we are
Mhm.
co-creators. And to me, it is a combination of like we have free will, right? And we have choice and we get to create our reality. But at the same time, there are certain lessons our soul signed up to learn in this lifetime. And so it's kind of like this balance between this free will choice I get to choose, but then also certain things in my destiny of like I need to learn this lesson. And if it is meant for me, like if I have to experience something in my lifetime, it will hit me across the face, like you know.
Mhm.
But there's so much that we do have choice on, and even in how things play out. And so if I'm getting a nudge and I really don't like what it has to say, I have to ask myself, is this just because? Why is it that I don't like what it has to say? Is it because I genuinely don't want that? Like they're saying I need to change this in my business, but I genuinely don't want that? Or is it because my ego feels safer here, but my soul really does want that? And so I'm just afraid to make the leap because there's a
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yeah.
So I think a good example is actually a relationship. Um, and I've seen this many times where I can tune in and it's very clear, like, leave the relationship, right? But if that person is like, no, like, I want to make this work. Okay. So let's shift the energy. So really the
Mhm.
question is, okay, spirit guide source, like, I don't like this answer. So how can I shift my energy to create this? So
Mhm.
and that's the part about manifestation and intuition that I think is really important that people understand, because I think that some of the language around it in different areas can be very disempowering, and I don't see it as like this is what I'm locked into, or like you know with manifestation it's not that I'm hoping it happens. It's like I'm deciding this is what I'm creating. So
Right.
show me what I need to follow, what I need to do, how to show up, how do I shift energetically to be in alignment with this? Like it's like I'm getting to decide and create. And with those intuitive nudges as well, like I have seen like the intuitive information is based on the energy right now, typically, right?
Right.
Also
Okay.
depending on how you're tuning in, right? So if I'm doing a psychic reading, that's going to be slightly different than like an Akashic Records reading, for example.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
there's tuning into different frequencies, but I can shift my energy to create something different. So maybe right now it's don't be in this relationship, but what if I shifted how I'm showing up and I'm shifting the dynamic of the relationship? People can change. A lot of
Mhm.
people choose not to, but they can, right? And so if I shift my energy, I can change the reality around me, and I might then later the intuitive nudge might be like, no, stay, this is good for you. So that's
I
what I would
like
invite
that.
people to look at of like, okay, if I don't like this and I genuinely don't, it's not just I'm afraid, because you're going to get nudges for your highest good, right? You're going to get nudges for your the expansion of your soul, really. And the universe is always supporting you. The universe is always supporting you in your beliefs, right? What you want to create, if you believe you're worthy of it. So you have to keep that in mind as well. But ask yourself, if you really don't like that nudge, be like, okay, so that's what the energy is right now. That's helpful information. So what can I shift? How do I shift myself? How do I show up differently energetically? What can I release? What can I change so that I'm in alignment with what I do want?
Right. I love that. I love that. That really spoke to me. And so like if you're not liking what the nudge is all about, and you have the ability to manifest a new story, a new result. You're not just like screwing up the whole deal for for success in your business if you don't do this one thing, or success in other related or whatever it is so tell me then about a nudge that you had to listen to that was really challenging for you, that ended up ultimately, like you followed it and it ended up paying off the most.
Oh man, the most. I mean, I kind of feel like my whole life is a series of these, but I like the way I live my life, you know, people are just like, what are you doing? I'm like, the universe is kicking me in the butt, but I think it tends to pop up with my business. And I have to really face like where my ego is showing up. And like for me at first, it was I had, built this very successful um, practice as a holistic nutritionist. And it was very much overnight. Like, I mean, I literally like physically was like kind of thrown backward of like, you need to change, you need to get out of this. Like, and when I get it that strongly, like I make a drastic change. And whenever you make a drastic change in your business that much, I mean, it's a little scary when you built something that where it like looks fine, right? It's successful, it's my safety. And then it's like, tear it all down, rebuild, right? So that was the first one, ended up paying off. I, I ended my nutrition practice pretty much overnight and just started business coaching. And everybody was there, everybody was waiting. It was like perfect, but I never would have expected it. And then again, with a lot of my business coaching work, I got very strongly like kind of a lot of the offers that I had made to support myself, like stop, end it. Like you need to be focused on your spiritual practice. You need to be focused on channeling. You need to be focused on, that lens. And so basically all of my main money makers, like I was just like guided to release. And so I did. And I was like, I don't have anything built here. So it's kind of been a series of with my business, like building something and I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then they're like, tear it down, get rid of it. Like, but it always pays off.
Yeah.
And I've learned to like, I'm good with fear. I've faced a lot of fears in my life. Like to me, again, with the chronic illness like that, like I was facing death for months. Like I was told, like I was going to doctors every single day and they're just like, yeah, there's something you can do. Like you're probably going to die at any moment, like any day
Oh,
now.
geez.
Like
Oh,
it was really
awful.
it was really
Oh,
awful. Like honestly, the bedside manner was not great.
oh,
And at the time I'm 20, and I'm like, I'm 20 years old and you're telling me like I'm screwed. Like, so, and I think just like facing death that intensely for a while kind of got me used to, I don't even care. I can rebuild from anything. And this is the reason though why a lot of people don't expand and why a lot of people limit themselves in their spiritual growth. It's not easy. Like it's not easy to face those parts of yourself, right? It's not easy to move past the fear. It's not easy to release things that we're tied to so much, right? And it's like if you think about a spiritual awakening in general, I mean, it's hard, right? It's like you're facing a lot of shadow. A lot of your relationships might change or leave, your whole business might shift. It's like you become a different person. And there are so many beautiful blessings in that. But a lot of people like don't do it because it's hard. Expansion is not comfortable. It's constantly facing discomfort. And so for me, it's like I've gotten used to being very uncomfortable and being just feeling so vulnerable with it in my life in general. But I've gotten so used to it. It's like I just let myself feel it, but I'm used to, okay, this is really uncomfortable and scary, but I have seen it pay off before. So I'm going to take what might be perceived as a leap, but I know I wouldn't be guided this strongly if it was really a leap. Like I am held. But
right.
to me, I feel like that's the difference between people who live ordinary and extraordinary lives. I see so many people who want something extraordinary, but they're not taking any risks. They're not living big. They're not following their intuition. And that's how you create things that are extraordinary in your life. It's like, it's not going to make sense. But I've learned that the most rewarding things in my life, like never make sense.
Well, it's so true. And that's one of the things that I want to speak to what you said, that, it is hard to become the person that that's in alignment with that frequency of what you want. You do have to take a leap of faith. You do have to take risks. Pretty much anything that I've ever gone for, it was always darkest before, I mean, it always looked like my world was falling apart,
Mm-hmm.
before the big manifestation ultimately ended up happening in a way that was completely different from how I imagined it would come about. And that's the thing that most people don't really understand when it comes to law of attraction and manifesting is they'll say, "Oh, if it was that easy, then everybody would be a millionaire. Well, no one said anything about it being easy. It's not
Mhm.
easy, but it's simple. It's simple because, there's a structure that
Mhm.
if you follow that structure and you like listen, and part of the structure means like taking the risk and listening to your intuition and, and taking the action steps that you're guided to take. Not everybody is going to take those action steps. And it's the people who take those risks that end up manifesting.
Mhm.
And, it's hard to explain sometimes, just the difference, between living an ordinary life and trudging along, and just kind of doing, what you think you're supposed to be doing, and an extraordinary life, like you mentioned, that's in more alignment with your true passion. And
Yeah. I mean, it requires a lot of trust. It requires a level of trust that most people aren't used to, and it requires surrender. And
mhm,
it really tests your limits in that sense. And kind of going back to your earlier question, it's like when people get the intuitive nudges and they're like, I don't want that, well, then it can just stop, right? Because sometimes like that is how you got to get there. And sometimes people don't want to face it. There have been, and it's typically about what you need to release or leave, right? Because it's holding down your frequency. So there have been many times in my life where I have felt stuck and I didn't want to listen to the intuitive nudge because I didn't want to release a relationship or something in my business or even like where I was living, right? And I just like it's not moving anywhere. And it wasn't until I followed the directive, I followed the guidance that it finally came through, And so again, it does require trust. It to your point, it is simple, but it's not always easy.
exactly. So what would you say you see like most people for? What would what do they mostly, what kind of problem are they usually having when they come to see you?
I mean, most people I work with are healers. So and it's kind of it's they want to expand their business, they want to attract in love, they want to attract in abundance. That's typically what people are looking. I'm mostly working with entrepreneurs, but in terms of like creating any of that, it's all the same stuff. It's all frequency work, right? It's all raising your frequency at its core. So most people who are coming to me are looking to create abundance in their lives, and that can come through in health, that can come through in relationships, in terms of money, of course. And I also know that a lot of people coming to me are looking to activate more of their gifts. So it's really like activating more of my gifts. How do I become a more effective, more powerful healer, and just really step into my purpose, really? So that's typically what people are coming to me for. And I don't it's all very holistic. I think everything's tied together, like I don't really see how you can to me, working on your business is also working on your personal life. Opening up your intuitive gifts is also affected by your personal life and your business. Like it's all connected. So we're really looking at all of that. But that's typically kind of, the type of person that's coming to me.
Right. That's got to be so gratifying, really helping people to like step into their abundance and become more successful in their business. And
Yeah, well, it was kind of made very clear to me by my guides, like that I'm really here to help other entrepreneurs and other healers, and like helping other people heal by helping other healers is going to
Mhm.
reach more people than me just trying to do it myself. And so that's kind of how my business ended up being built without me even totally being conscious of it as it was happening. I didn't understand how it was going to all tie together. But most people who come to me like end up going through most of my programs because they see how it all ties together. And I think we need a lot more healers in the world, right? We need more people doing all this type of alternative work because this is the way of the future. Like this, to me, this is like where it's going to be at. Like the spirituality, I believe, is going to be very mainstream, like the true version. And I think that people are going to come back to different types of healing, energy healing, hypnotherapy, hypnosis, all that kind of work.
Mhm.
It's going to be a process of it becoming as mainstream as I would like to see, but I think more and more people are waking up to that, and there are a
Yeah.
lot of people that need support. like there aren't enough healers.
I agree. And I feel like just having been in this type of field for the last 20 years, what I see most often, I think why there's not as many is because a lot of them that try to go into this business, they don't make it. And I think the reason why they don't make it is exactly with what you help them to understand. And, can you speak a little bit about the abundance and success in the healing profession, because
Mm.
so many people have this outdated idea that it's, if you're a healer and you have these gifts, why don't you work for free, and why should you charge so much money? And can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think for anybody who believes that, I mean, this is one of my like when people bring this up, it's just like one of the most laughable things to me. Because my question is, I'll just ask somebody if they ever say this to me. I'm like, well, what, like, why do you think that? And they typically don't have anything to say in response, right? Would you say that to your doctor? Why don't you do this for free? Like that, like, would you say that? Right. Um, but I think there's a misunderstanding, and this is typically also the person who's blocked from abundance in their life in general because they don't understand the energetics of abundance, and money is just one manifestation of abundance, right? Abundance can come through in so many ways, but for me, like my outer world is a reflection of how I feel about myself, right? And I think that the belief, oh, if you're a healer, it should work for free, was very much a control mechanism, honestly, to keep very powerful healers from stepping into their worth and being able to reach more people. The more money I make, the more people I can serve. The more money I make, the more I can offer free resources for people who maybe can't afford things. The more I can train other healers, the more people I can reach. Like resources, like give us more reach, right? And people need to stop, like what's underneath that typically is this association where like money is bad. And if you have a belief that money is bad, I mean, that's probably going to be reflected in your life. You're probably struggling in that aspect. Money isn't bad. Money isn't bad. Money is neutral, right? And there might be people who use money in ways that you might not like, but there are also people who use money in really, really helpful ways, right? The more money I make, the more I can donate, the more I can support other people, the more jobs I can provide, the more people I can hire, right? And this is like how the economy works. But we have to stop like attaching this good or bad to money. And this is also where we're staying in that three-dimensional paradigm of this is better or worse than. But to be a healer, right? You have to also be the example. And if you're not providing for yourself financially, you're not taking care of yourself. Food gives us shelter, right? Like food gives us, or money gives us shelter, money gives us food. Like this is how we provide for ourselves. And the more I'm taking care of myself, the more I can give to other people. Like it is an energy exchange, right? So there's that whole aspect of it. There's also the aspect of when I put money into something, I have a more powerful experience. And many people might not realize this until they have that experience, but I have had it again and again. And I've seen it with many clients where I can give someone one service for, let's say $100. I could give the same service for $500. And I wonder who's going to have a bigger transformation. It's the person who puts more money down, typically. And there's a lot that goes into that, but typically it's like, when somebody puts some money down, they're committing, right? They're saying yes to themselves. They're saying, yes, I am worth it. And what's at the core of like everything with manifestation, attraction is like, am I worthy of this? Because if I don't believe I'm worthy of it, then I'm not going to receive it. Like you have to feel like you're worthy of it. And money is often just kind of like a vehicle where people say, yes, I believe I'm worthy of it. Because if I put a couple grand down, you can bet your butt I'm going to show up and I'm going to learn this information that I paid for. But if I put $5 down, I might forget about it. I'm not really showing up. I'm also saying that I'm only willing to bet $5 on myself. Like, how much are you willing to bet on yourself, really? Right.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
So there's so many angles to that. But I totally agree with you. And I think that's why a lot of people don't make it. But I would invite you to question, like, where does that belief come from of like, if I make money, I'm not spiritual? That doesn't even make sense, because if you really understand how energy works, the more spiritual you are, the more money you make.
Beautiful. I mean, there were so many amazing nuggets in there. Just boom, 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 boom. Like you just called it. And,
It's a big one that I feel
yeah.
passionately about because I see a lot of people really struggling. I see a
Yeah.
lot of people who aren't charging much. Oh, like and they're struggling in their lives and then they can't show up. But like the more I get paid for my work, the more I can also give things for free, right? But like I have to make sure I'm provided for. And I think we also have to think about what we're teaching other people.
Setting an example,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's everything that you said. I mean, it's 100% the truth. And, and so um how can people that are listening to this, because I know I have a lot of people that are spiritual entrepreneurs that would love to make more money in their business and release some of those blocks and get on their path and and start to really tune into what it is that they're truly meant for, or just become more abundant, what would the next step with you look like?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend going to my podcast. First of all, I have over 400 episodes and I have a lot of content
Ooh,
on there, like
it's
for free
amazing.
with a lot of, it's spiritual, it's business, but I think that's really helpful. I would also recommend if you go to my website and you go to the free guide section, I have a masterclass on how to build a six-figure online coaching business that can be really helpful if you're interested in building a business in particular. But a lot of those free resources, I have a ton of free resources that just can help align you with abundance. But I will also say, just for everybody listening, I would recommend checking out my 30-day 5D ascension challenge. It is, I say 30 days, but you can take your time with it. But it's 30 days of channeled messages and then associated lessons. And you'll get an email each day with some exercises to do. And if you show up to that, like if you listen to those messages, you will become aligned with abundance. Like it's a very transformational challenge. And again, you can take your time with it, but it's really doing a lot of that brain rewiring and a lot of activation. There are a lot of activations just through the messages themselves. So I would highly recommend people check that out as well. And all that's on my website.
Awesome. So they just go to your website and ChristinaTheChannel.com and they can get access to all of those resources.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, it's been so nice getting to know you. And this has just been so valuable information and, really just so interesting. You're a really interesting person. And I'm glad that, the universe blessed you with these gifts, to really help other people to get in touch with their gifts and to expand and explore and to become more of who they are. So thank you so much for blessing us on the Power of Your Mind podcast with your gifts today.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I had so much fun and I really hope that people find this valuable. So, yeah, I'm really grateful for you. So, thank you for having me on.
Thank you.